Hey guys, how are you? So it's another beautiful day over here in the land of Give It to the People. And today we have another wonderful guest because we are back with Give It to the People Live. If you missed us last week, so sorry. We had work to do, which meant we couldn't be on here live. But we did drop an extra episode that was a replay of CEO Nikki. So hopefully you guys were able to see that and hear that. But if not, it's okay because everything is already online for you if you just go to our YouTube channel, and I'll go ahead and I'll put the link in afterwards so that this way you can go and check out all of the videos from the past. But today we have a great guest on that I met because I went to Capital Connects, and I've been going to Capital Connects for years. I don't even know how many years, to be honest with you. So Capital Connects is actually an event that is here in Greensboro that Launch Greensboro puts on. And what it is it's an opportunity for people to pitch their business, but they also get coaching and things ahead of time. So I'm going to let our guests talk about that. And then, once they pitch, then they can win some money. And so they always have a host of great businesses that are out there that are displaying unique things. And I ran into this young lady and I was like, I love your business. I definitely need to interview you. And she was chocolate. Come on. Now, that was like a winning combination, right? So I'm going to bring on our guest today. Malobi, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Hello, hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I want you to just give them a little bit of background and tell them about your company, DEI Directive.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of DEI Directive. And for those of you that don't know, DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So we are a DEI and employee engagement technology company. And really what that means is that we help, people like human resource professionals and diversity professionals to really take the guesswork out of the DEI, management process. So anytime they have to make, decisions or understand what the organization needs as far as hiring, as far as performance management, who has a seat at the table, who does not. We essentially provide the software that gives them the deep data, comprehensive data that they need to understand what's happening within the organization and to help them make better decisions, so that, when they roll out DEI initiatives, those initiatives can actually be successful. So that's what we do.
So from what I'm understanding, it takes kind of the guesswork out of finding out who's actually in the company, and then if they need to be promoted or if they need to be moved somewhere else. If there is a team maybe that needs diversity that doesn't have as much, it'll help do those kind of things, which makes it a little bit easier.
Exactly. It does that and so much more. It's really just, again, giving chief diversity officers and chief human resources officers the data, the information that they need to understand the dynamics at play and to identify specifically what areas in the organization need additional effort.
Okay. And so with this software, then my assumption is they go ahead, they buy the software, and then they can just use it forever. Are there like updates that they need to have? Is this an ongoing, or they just maybe want to come in and use it just for this time frame? And I'm just saying it like this because it's a lot of companies that tend to be in trouble, and all of a sudden they want to do diversity and inclusion. And so, is this something that's an ongoing thing they can use once? How does that work for the companies?
So it is an ongoing thing. And I love that you asked that question because that's one of the things that we really need to change, this perception that DEI is something that you come in, you focus on for 2 months or 6 months, and then you're done. No, as long as you have human beings working at your organization, you are going to need to be very intentional about DEI. The other piece that we often have to educate people around is the business case for DEI. So you're not just, paying attention to DEI and trying to make sure that you're finding good ways to operationalize and actually make change within the organization because it's the right thing to do. Yes, it's the right thing to do. But guess what? It impacts whether or not your business makes more money or not. So there is a business imperative, and it's directly tied to the organization's financial bottom line at the end of the day. So
now when you say that, and that's what they want to hear, right? They want to hear the money. They want to hear, why am I investing in this software? So I would imagine that this helps with retention. And I would also imagine that this may possibly also help with job satisfaction from an employer/employee standpoint, and kind of vice versa.
Absolutely. It does all of the above, right? So, part of our software is really being able to pay close attention to how the employees that you have today feel about working in your workplace. Do they feel they have access to opportunities? Do they feel like they're getting to be developed? while they're in their roles, right? Do they see a path forward? Do they feel like they're getting, fair pay for the job that they're doing? So, our software really allows you to, again, not only look at the demographic breakdown of, what the dynamics and the composition of your organization is, but also to understand for those that are there, how are they actually feeling? And so then if you start seeing trends, wait a minute, oh, the women seem to be highly, very dissatisfied. Now we can be very proactive in, trying to address that head on, as opposed to when, we have, quite a bit of women walk away, and then now we're being reactive, but the damage has already been done, and we've incurred a lot of, financial loss, because each employee attrition actually costs the organization quite a bit of money.
Now, when you talk about like who your customer is, I understand it's definitely the companies that, have these employees. They want to boost that satisfaction. They also do want to be not necessarily compliance, but they do want to, if I use the word comply, more so with the way that our culture is moving, right? So not comply like it's a compliance issue that they have to do it, but comply in the sense that it is, like you said, the right thing to do. What type of person is your customer that is thinking about, listen, I need to definitely work with DEI Directive?
Yeah. So, within organizations, the main people that we're talking to are, human resource, professionals. We're talking to, diversity officers, chief diversity officers. Those are the main people that we're talking to. Sometimes we also engage with the executive, because the executive typically understands, right? I mean, they're feeling the pressure from employees, from prospective employees, from stakeholders, investors, customers, right? To really start paying attention to this issue and to really, show them what they're doing internally to address it. So sometimes we loop them into that conversation as well. But most of the people is usually, human resource executives and diversity officers executives. And I also want to kind of go back to the point you made about the compliance piece. Yes, a lot of times organizations feel like, oh, we have to do DEI for the compliance piece. And there is that piece for sure, because, for certain types of organizations, there's a government mandate to report diversity numbers annually. Yes. So at the very minimum, you have to be doing that. And our software actually helps you do that and simplifies that process. But then again, it kind of goes back though to that business justification. You cannot be doing DEI for simply the compliance reasons, because when you do that, you're really leaving money on the table, and you're not really optimizing revenue and the bottom line for your organization. So you really have to embrace it, because it increases innovation, it increases, brighter ideas, engagement, productivity, all of that.
Now, when you talk about the hiring process, I would imagine that companies get thousands on top of millions, right, of applications, depending on how large the company is and how many branches that they may have, and then just the positions that they're hiring for. But when we kind of look at that and we say, from that standpoint of just getting in applications, does it help to kind of sift through that as well before you actually hire? Because, we've been talking about it from the perspective of, okay, well, you're the chief diversity officer, or you're the person in the company, and you're looking at the people that already work here. Does it also help with the people that are thinking about working?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it does, right? I mean, that's the thing with like DEI. You have to be really, really intentional, because it's sort of like anytime you want to hire, let's say like underrepresented groups, like by race and ethnicity, right? They are the minority in the country. So in a lot of ways, it's sort of like finding, in some cases, like a needle in a haystack, right? And so it's going to require you being intentional. So understanding, okay, we have this job open, we've put it out there. Who are we actually alerting that we have this opening in our organization? How are we doing about it? Is it all through like referrals? So all the employees know about this position and they're telling their network, but wait a minute, my workforce is not diverse. It's mostly like, let's say 95%, white employees, men and women. Well, our network tends to reflect us. So if you have an opening and your means of getting, that out there is through like referral, having your employees sell their network, well, you can see how you're probably not going to be as effective, right? So it really requires you to be very intentional, looking at the numbers to understand what are some of the demographic that we just don't have any kind of representation, or they are severely underrepresented in my organization. And where do those people go, right? Where can I go to get in front of them, to let them know and make them aware that this position exists? Because it's hardly ever that there is no experienced people within these groups. It's hardly ever that they are not skilled. That's almost never the case, right? It's just that they are not part of the system. They're in the outskirts of the system. And so they don't have that awareness. They don't apply. And now you have a demographic, candidate slate pool that looks like the current employees. You employ them, and then that sort of keeps that cycle going. So you have to be really intentional and strategic in that approach.
Yeah, and I've heard that for years on top of years. Like when people do job fairs, and specifically, so for me, I went to a PWI, I went to Elon. So I would say that the people that were coming to scout for employees didn't necessarily look like me, but the opportunity was there for me to possibly meet companies that might not come to a HBCU. Yeah. And so it seems like now, of course, that there's a trend and there's an interest in, oh, wow, let's go to HBCUs. They have good people too. Yeah. It's always like it's a secondary or possibly even a tertiary thought of, oh, they're colleges. These people could be there that could serve our company. And then that will lead us to diversity. And so I think that that's an important point that you make is sometimes you just don't come to where the people are. Yeah. And by not doing that, then you do your business a disservice, because there are great people that do have this skill set and that could be, an asset to your company. But just being able to, diversify that pool definitely makes a difference. And so I think that's really an important thing when you talk about it from scouting, right? Like looking to find those employees. So does it work also kind of the opposite way? So if I'm an employee or, I'm a prospective employee and I'm looking to kind of work with a company, I would imagine that because your software tracks so many different people, is there like an opportunity for the employee to kind of reverse engineer it and look for companies that need that DEI? Like, I don't know if there's something specific for them, but I would think that that would be a wonderful thing for employees to be able to even look at those companies that might overlook them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think a lot of people are doing that already. Like, the average employee or prospective employee is so savvy these days, right? Everybody has, their powerful computer device, which is their phone, and they can access a lot of information. So whether you know it or not, there's probably a lot of information about your organization online, including how inclusive you are and the kind of culture and how underrepresented groups, feel, or the types of experiences they've had working in your organization. So absolutely, there is definitely an opportunity for, employees to essentially get a bit more information on the employer before they, take the position. I will say though, I mean, the way our software is designed right now, it's really for organizations. So it's really, something that is geared to help, executives. So chief human resource officers, chief diversity officers, really have access to the information that they need to make better decisions, simplifying sort of that people decision process. It's what we call it. So that's more what it's geared towards for sure.
Okay. Now, as far as some of the training, because I would imagine they get the software, they need to know how to use it, right? Do you do anything maybe that's more of like, because one of the things that we do is the curated conferences where we're bringing people together, where you can bring those HR, those diversity and inclusion officers together to be able to present your software to them so that they know about it, because sometimes it is just because people didn't know. And then once they see, not only is this great, you being who you are immediately adds diversity to probably anything that they've had, because being a Black woman in tech, those numbers are way smaller. I don't know what the statistics are, but I do know that specifically for something that you're doing, there's not a lot, not a lot of Black women that are in tech that are doing exactly what you're doing. So, how would that work for people? Like, is there something that you can bring people together to learn more about your software?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we are, basically reaching out to organizations, and organizations are reaching out to us. It's like a two-way street. And so we're able to, schedule a meeting and understand really what they're doing, right? Because sometimes their goal or ultimately what they achieve, it might not be completely in alignment with what we're trying to do, or our software might not be the best fit, right? So we need to have that initial conversation. But I would say really for pretty much most of the organizations we've talked to, so long as we're talking to the chief human resource officer and the chief diversity officer, most of them have a need for our software. Some of them might be maybe a little far removed in terms of they haven't even started to grapple what that process needs to be internally. So they know they need us, but they need to do a little bit more of conversation strategy building internally, before they bring us on board. So we're definitely connecting with our prospective customers that way. Another thing that we do events, right? So we do events, we do speaking engagements, we keynote, I keynote. So we really try to go to a lot of industry events. So industry events meaning human resource professional events. We go to DEI diversity conferences. We're also really targeting or focusing on healthcare as well, because so what we found, as we've done just a ton of customer discovery, is that the healthcare industry is really ripe for DEI, right? They are actively engaged. Especially, given what happened with the pandemic, it really exposed some of the structural systemic inequities in health. And so it's something that really has hit us all in the face. And so now they're, really being intentional and having conversations on what structures that, need to be built within the healthcare industry to remedy that and ensure that we're not in the same space in 5 years, 10 years time. And so those people are reaching out and actively engaging with us as well.
And I just imagine that, because when we met, we talked about the healthcare industry and kind of the fact that, when you look at the workers, the people that are not necessarily saying at the bottom, but the workers, right? Your nurses, your CNAs, all of those will typically be comprised of minorities, right? Then when you start to raise up the ladder and you go to the doctors, then it changes, and then that will change into something that tends to be a little bit more skewed toward white male. And then when you go to administration, that's a whole nother thing where it is primarily dominated by white male. So if you have this hierarchy and then you're saying, well, these are the people that are dealing with our customers because that's what the patients are on a daily basis, then how can you then allow for a little bit more growth, a little bit more parity within that structure? And so the software is able to help them kind of make those decisions. Because one of the things that you mentioned was, kind of like professional development. So for people, are they asking for the professional development, where they do want to take more classes, they do want to, gain more skills? Does this help them or the company to make that decision of, oh, we should actually train people?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be surprised a lot of people that realize, of course, there are disparities, but without looking at the numbers, you actually significantly underestimate how bad it is. So, the picture you just painted about looking at an organization and looking at what happens and how literally every demographic loses every rung up that organizational ladder. The only person or group that continues to gain consistently is white men, right? So if you're looking at the entry level for most organizations, and this is from a 2021 McKinsey study, at the entry level, white men make up about, I think the number is 35%. By the time you get to the C-suite, that's 62%. So I know. So it's bad, but until you look at the numbers, you're like, wow, that's quite striking. Okay. And then white women as well, they're about 24% at the entry level. Now they lose a little bit of ground. So they drop to, I think, about 22% at the C-suite level. So they lose ground, but not as significantly. And then every other demographic, they basically almost disappear by the time you get to the C-suite. So, and this is why I love to do this work, because a lot of people don't really understand how dire the situation is. And so having the data, right? My background, I'm an attorney, so I believe in evidence-based approach any day. And to me, that's what data is, right? So this is not just conjecture. This is not just, I think, I'm guessing, right? Or I heard. This is, here are the numbers. This is what it's been like last year, the year before, 5 years, 10 years. And what are we going to do about it, right? And even when we put initiatives in place, how do we actually measure that whatever we're doing is working? And that in 2 years and 5 years, yes, it's not going to happen overnight, but in 2 years and 5 years, how do we actually quantify the impact that we're having? How do we know that all of these efforts are yielding something? And that's been sort of like more of the hot button topic lately, because everybody jumped on the DEI bandwagon about 3 years ago. And now it's sort of like, wait a minute, well, we did all this training. What do we have to show for it? And in a lot of cases, it's nothing. So
But that's because they did the training, but then there was no accountability as far as a metric to actually say we want to get to this level. And I mean, some companies will put out some arbitrary number to say, well, we want to increase by XYZ%, but did you actually do it? Like, was the
exactly.
work there in order to make it happen? And
Exactly.
that makes a huge difference.
Right.
And then let's not forget that even in those positions, that they still have turnover as well. So you
Yeah.
could have something where you had an HR manager that was really great, and then they found something that was paying more, and then they left. And so whatever they started, now it's kind of like starting over again.
Yeah.
So that can happen as well. And I mean, I think that those are real effects of, and when you mention COVID, of how the employee is actually dictating what's happening at the companies. Like, the companies used to run everything.
Yeah.
The employees are saying, well, listen, I want more money. I want
Yeah.
more benefits. I want to work from home, So that's one of the things I wanted to ask you. Have you found that with your software that there has been a drastic change or trend with the work from home, possibly be hybrid kind of thing? Has that really affected what the HR managers are having to deal with right now?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I feel like every HR event I go to right now, there are sort of like two recurring major challenges or obstacles, right? One is really being able to manage or like employee expectations is very, very different. Employees are, and I think it's just by virtue of having been through the pandemic and the racial reckoning, following, George Floyd's murder.
Mhm.
Um, Employees are just very, very savvy. They are much more well versed on what they want out of their work life, and they are less likely to settle for anything that really does not align with their principles. And I
Mhm.
think, beyond some of the things I talked about, I think obviously the gig economy is also playing a role. Like, I can walk away and I can drive an Uber. It might not be ideal, but I can definitely make money tomorrow just to pay off my
Mhm.
bills, right? And
Yeah.
so that's definitely a challenge. And then the other big part is the data, recognizing that data has to be a critical part of your DEI strategy. If we're just slapping on, different types of training and hoping something works, I mean, training is important, don't get me wrong. It's a
Mhm.
critical part of the process, but we can't just train our way to success, right? So there's
Mm.
got to be much more than that. And data has to be a part of that equation for you to stand any chance of having any kind of impact within the organization.
Yeah, now you sparked something else in my mind. And so just quickly, because I know we're getting almost to the end. And I know, guys, you can't like imagine that we're almost over, because this has been such a great conversation, right? But the thing that I'm thinking about right now is titles. Okay. So I would
Mm.
love for you to speak to how people slap a title onto somebody, and that maybe that title doesn't even have any additional money that comes with it, but there's an expectation for a person to now be over something because now they have a title, and how has that kind of affected the whole, just the aspect of the employee's mindset at companies? Has that been something that you've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's come up quite a bit, right? Especially sort of like, over the last few years when it comes to DEI, just having underrepresented groups within the workforce getting tapped on the shoulder to take on roles, regardless of whether or not they actually have interests, right? I
Oh,
mean, not every Black woman wants to be in DEI, right? Or even be involved in that effort. Not every Asian man wants to be involved in that effort. So there's definitely a lot of that going with, and obviously, when you put somebody and it's not really something that they're passionate about or really want to be a part of, you can see how, you may not necessarily get the best. And then the other piece too that, that I saw pretty early on is with the chief diversity officer title.
mhm.
Some people empowering people, putting them in that position, but well, they put them in that position, but they didn't really empower them, right? And
Cool.
so it's sort of this rubber stamp. So yes, I'm the chief diversity officer, but I really cannot get anything done because essentially I have to lobby my CEO. I have to lobby the executive board. I just have to do so much lobbying, and I'm spending most of my time lobbying instead of actually doing the work. Um,
Mhm.
and so we did a ton of customer discovery actually at the beginning, like when this was all just an idea.
Okay.
And one of the main groups that people would talk to was chief diversity officer, and this was a major, major issue. And so part of what we did with our software is really being able to empower them with data. So that now I'm not just going, oh, this is a good idea, we should do this, this is what, but I can give you that information in data, right? So now you're looking at, again, the evidence. This is why we should do that. This is, the impact that we had with the work that we did over the last year.
Mhm.
And so that really helps empower them, so that they can go lobby for whatever their position is more successfully within the organization. And ultimately that translates to impact, and then impact that can be sustainable long term.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's an important thing, because you can say, I want to do something, but if you don't have the means to actually do it, I mean, it's just talk. And I've found, just from just what I've seen over the last couple of years, has been most of these new chief diversity officers tend to be Black women. And it's like, we are qualified for other positions other than that. And so did you choose us just because we were Black women so that you can say that now you have some diversity?
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand that that's still an important thing. I understand the position is there, but I just always imagine that there might have been somebody else at the company who would have been great at that as well. And so it's just always interesting to me that that tends to be what you see at the helm of a lot of companies, is that they're specifically going in to get Black women to do it. And now, mind you, Black women are incredible, and we can do all kinds of amazing things, and we can turn your companies around, right? So that's a definite, but at the same time, I'm just always interested to see, were there any other, races, that could have possibly done this. And it just seems to me, when you talk about the whole trope of a strong Black woman, we're in here trying to turn your company around consistently, right? And so I know that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, and for me, like the biggest, I completely hear you. And obviously we cannot undercut what a Black woman brings to the table when it comes to DEI, right? I mean, they bring a pretty well-rounded, experience. But to your point, it can't just be that demographic alone. I mean, this is a problem we all have a role in resolving within our organization. And so I think it's really important to think, way broadly about who's involved in that effort within our organization, including those that have a seat at the table, right? White men have to be involved in that conversation as well, not just as allies, but even more critical role than that.
Now, if people are saying, listen, okay, Malobi, I love this, girl, bring this DEI directive to me, because we know we are a mess, and we need you to we need you to come fix our company and get our diversity together, so that this way we can be more prosperous, right? How can people get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. So you can get in touch with me. My email address is Malobi. So my first name, Malobi, at DEIdirective.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, my personal page, as well as a DEI directive page. Obviously, our website has, contact information as well. But yeah, I love to speak to people. This really is a passion for me. It's not just a job. And so if you are even wondering and you're not quite sure, please reach out. We'll be happy to have a conversation with you.
And I just want people to know, because I didn't ask this question previously, but where are you from? Because of the accent.
Yeah, you picked up on that.
Of course.
So, I'm a child of the world. I was born in Nigeria. My family and I moved to Malaysia, so in Asia, when I was 12.
Wow.
And so I lived in Asia for almost 10 years. And then I moved to the States when I was 20, in my early 20s. I moved to Minnesota. And now I live in the Charlotte area. So my family and I lived in the Charlotte area for about 5 years. So I have, definitely there's a strong Nigerian accent there, but there's also a little bit of everything. I think I pick up things as I travel. So I hold on to them. So
yeah, but that's interesting. Okay, I would have never picked up the Malaysia portion, but I definitely love the global perspective to it. And I mean, honestly, it gives you even a more well-rounded view of the world, right? And so you choosing to take this on as a business is a major investment into just our culture and in general, right? In the human being culture. And I just applaud you for that. So I am so happy that I had you on today. I hope that more people definitely get to learn about DEI Directive. She does want you to go ahead and pay her. So book her for some keynotes, right? Like go ahead and get the software, do all of the things so that this way, we can get more diversity in our world, because the thing is, it's here. We just need the companies to also represent that, which then gives us, a whole better environment to be in, So if you had one final word or phrase or thought to share with people today, what would that be?
I would say just do it, right? When it comes to DEI, I think a lot of people have sort of like analysis, freezing, so to speak. Yeah. So I just say just do it. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you feel like you're 5 years behind. Even when you're ahead, there's room for improvement. So just do it. Decide that you're going to do it, and then commit to actually making it work despite the roadblocks and obstacles.
I love that. Thank you so much. Now, since you're a lawyer, we don't want Nike to sue you for taking their but it's okay. We know what you meant, right? Okay, so thank you so much for being on. Everybody that's watching live, thank you guys. And I see we have a comment. It said, great conversation, pointing out the lack of diversity in leadership and to our leadership at a conference last week. And they seem shocked, right? And I don't know why they seem shocked, but I think sometimes maybe television makes people think that the world is just so diverse, but it's not always represented in the companies. And so thank you for that comment. So anybody else that's watching on a replay, you can still leave comments and go ahead and just watch some of the past episodes. And thank you again for being on. And for everybody else, make sure you always show up and show out and continue to give it to the people. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.